All right. Ooh. Yeah. Sound loud. Right. Let's start with making a short mandala offering, and then we're going to go for refuge and bodhicitta as a way of developing our motivation. Sa shi pu ki ju shi me to cham ri rab li shi ni de gen pa di Sangye Shindu Mite Owa Idroku Namdam Shin La Chuba Shoidam Guru Ratnamanda Kamniyatayami. Nojeng Sogi Chonam La Chanchu Badu Dani Kyasuchi. Dagi Shushi Gibe Tonangi Drolam Benshi Sangi Drobarasho. Sanji Chodam Soji Chonam La Chanchu Badu Dani Kyasuchi. Dagi Chushi Gibe Tonangi Drolam Benshi Sangi Drobarasho. Sanji Chodam Soji Chonam La Chanchu Badu Dani Kyasuchi. Dagi Chushi Gibe Tonangi Drolam Benshi Sanji Drobarasho. Kanki Tudini Zonde Tawa Tamje Pambi Chere Tambi Chun Denze Kodam Tela Changse Lo. Good morning, everyone. Something Shane told me necessary. Tan Kanu changes the Kyoji Randu Samashum, she Sumbataros. Prashita. So we're looking at mind training like the rays of the sun. Currently, we're looking at a section that explains the way to develop bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. So I'm wondering, for those who are using the hard copy, what page 50? All right, page 50 in the text.
Thank you. Kazi zalawada chilaudo shira zalawada chilaudo jida mekashi til desha anjada deni seros sebochi dangombochi ane sebodi 당한주 타와다 안에 소체도 세워주세요. 아니 디고 짱마시 샤와이나 약부르 준다스. 가서 나가도 배나 아주 겐드메 나로이 마이나야. 비 겐신체네. 소자피나리 슈나리 그 겐신체네. 되게 어려웠어. 가서 나 소랑규 라발이야. 아니 그렇지. noche con chose game deixação chose tempo cuidar samji
ko mas redoi a little bit of a drama. Are you all right? Gaudirve.
Ah,
Gaudirve.
Yablotian.
Rera in the Soporimbo. Oh, yeah.
Kuja the chosen Norsha.
La.
Kuja the chosen Norchi. Chosen Gandesh. Yeah, and these are Kasota. But those Kapsando Shana Yabudus, Kazima Dede, the Mikashi Dede, the Lamnaya Missem the Pogoroda.
So there was one more thing that Geshe wanted to add to something that I said a few days ago. So we have those new cushions here. So we have yellow ones and blue ones. So when we made those cushions, Geshe had that idea that the Sangha would be using the yellow one and the lay community would be using the blue one. So as you can see, we have two rows, the yellow and the blue. So it's good to keep the yellows one for the Sangha. Also, sometimes according to the Vinaya, we see it according to the order of seniority, and certain offerings are made according to seniority. So it's good to keep it like that. Geshe thought of just saying it just in order to, in some sense, have a clear plan at the beginning.
Yeah, the Nanglok to gain to Lambina. I'm going to Sanga Kazus Legre, the someday, and then what to say, shop, but then cousin the D any can Gendon Balaya, any Kuship change Chevana, D and Tosala Droger Modo, this was a chon drugmaros, raw.
So we can also plan ahead, think of how many people are coming and arrange the seats according to that when we can. Anyway, it's good to keep it in mind so that we can also become respectful. Becoming respectful is also a way of accumulating merit. So it's just good to keep it in mind.
Benada, one pigi Dutrim Layashu, Chickading, Gilombato and Candados, Loudon the Pedrogena, and it's Tawa Sumajin by the Susu Miki Walla, Degmaris, Cousin Susugula, Dombadelea, Kubik, and Kuzik Chedo, and could Sansam Taranaya, Dombadelea Magu, Dombad Zimido Cheche, and Miguel Walla, Susu Debaina, Dombalea Makuva Chagoris, Do Corona Dindioris. So
every once in a while, Geshe adds bits like that to the teachings, because it's good to know about these points. Like, for example, in the way that we do things here in our society might be different to the way that you do things in Tibetan society, which is kind of deeply devout and Buddhist society, where you'd find that monastics normally sits at the front, not at the back or lower than the laity, in a sense that one needs also to have a sense of respect to one's vows. So, if we disregard our vows or belittle our vows, then that would be something that is negative, which also, there's a mentioning of that also in the Vinaya scriptures. So it's just good to know that.
좀 전에 고랑기 대마탄의 투제리고 차오스라디 동발랑비 참 다가는 동발랑비 참 다가라니 지 비기 소수 전삼 담아서는 탁 쳐버리스 송여 아주 두스 베나 아니 시리랑가 공바도 탈링 공바도 두스 좋은디게 콘줄람상 안줄이야 캐나 아니 타와진 로카즈드로서 동발란 로카즈드로서 랍진 다가랑 비기 아니 산삼들이야 샤그도 왔어라.
In the Vinaya literature that deals with ordination and the rules for monastic, one of the things that is stated is that you consider the order of seniority according to the time of ordination. So a time of old, when we use like a time machine or time scale, according to the sun. So as soon as the sun just slightly shifted, you would consider your time of ordination or your seniority of ordination, even according to that slight movement of the sun scale. Anyway, in some countries, like for example, Geshe visited some Sri Lankan temple. When you come in, then they ask you about your time of ordination, when did you get ordained, how long have you been ordained, and so forth, and they arrange the sitting according to that. So it's good to know that.
간지 nganzo tachi gitsulo inandra ani tawa ani inandra ani chi pigi sanga the media ima inandra nganzo mi chigwares ro mi chane pigi tichigi omars inya domba di yemek chan ani dikeba yaji jadam yores tinza di chane domba teleya ani gitsulo domba teleya kubik chat Tila kudishuichado, and Getson Domba Dembi, Kanzadi, Yashayadi, Dombatella Kubishadres, Dombatella Kudid and Ton Yabana, Maumbaina, Susu Gigi, Havati, and Yardraya, Kazi love them Mangaginia, and the Rangula love them Kiagi, Pachala Soba, Kanji didn't care Mambu Yunguyasares, Mado, and it's on the Nembu Shucheni, and in Duvi Chabatus, Nangueski Omaras.
So as Buddhist practitioners, we work on accumulating the collections, purifying negativities and obscurations. And as such, we look at what we can do in our practice. There are things that we can do and things that we cannot do. Now, if we disregard the things that we can do and always aspire to do what currently we're incapable of, or we find it really difficult, if we disregard the things that we can do, then it is likely that we're not going to be able to have a great progress. So it's good to pay attention to those things. So in terms of ordination, whether you're a monk or a nun, or whether you're a sangha or a lay practitioner, we're all the same as being human beings. But still, here, when we look at those who possess vows, those who have taken the vow of ordination, we, as practitioners, we develop a sense of respect to the vow and also to those who have the vow, and we integrate that as part of our trainings, right? The trainings that were laid out by the Buddha. And as such, not only to fix the training, but also we place imprints upon a mental continuum. So it's not that we take up practices such as this as an arbitrary practice that doesn't have any reason or basis for that. It is supportive of the training that we undertake. It is supportive of the imprint that we place upon a mental continuum. So it's good to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
In terms of order, generally, yes, when you ordain, that's the level of your the date of your highest level of ordination. Highest one when you talk about.
All right, so just a clarification also with respect to the different levels of ordinations. Jason, there are Genshin Mashue, Genshin Jimbatone, then the Sugarwa. Ni tak gelon tan getsu dini la yang kebachi shagogreve pena dutsu gelon tan getsu niga yorwala. Jason, kesi kunanchiwa di kesi getsu lo mambush muna druwaina niamana gelon Jumne Shirama Drawina, young Geloyan, Gemba did it. Sige or bes, Peshicho dingere.
It's a go ras. And then Dombadi said the Mason Toshu Gelong Dombateras. The D and it gets to Dumni, Pigitachi, Lord Galambachi by Naya. Any Gelong Dombashimena, Gelong Sabo Atelia, and it chats as a you'll child waters. Then doing a seagores.
Yeah, also the level of ordination makes a difference in that full ordination is considered to be the highest level of ordination, right? So if you're fully ordained, even if you're new fully ordained, you would be sitting ahead of those who are have a lesser level of ordination. So you might be ordained as on a lesser level of ordination as a Getzel for many years, and there would be something brand new, one day coming along and they have full ordination. So because therefore ordination is regarded as a high level of ordination, then they would be regarded as more senior.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Just with vows, it's good to have vows. Some vows, we can't take vows unless they are offered.
Mm-hmm.
Some vows don't come around very often, like ordination and Catholic vows are not, they're rare. Can we take vows, pledges ourselves to increase the merit, I guess, of vows? So things like we might pledge to our teacher that we 100,000 examens or do a pilgrimage or something. Does that come in that same sort of
Mm-hmm. All right, so taking ordination vow or taking tantric vow is something that is quite rare. We don't get to do it often. So the ability to then accumulate the collections and purify negativities and obscurations, also the opportunities for doing so also become quite limited in relation to those vows. So can we then make other commitments, like for example, decide that we're going to do this practice or the other practice, 100,000 recitation of miximas as a pledge, and that would be tantamount or similar to taking a vow that will help you to accumulate the collections and so forth. Tadi getsulongi tomba leape shintu kombores di ngagi tomba yan leagi ko di shintu kombores. Ni 제산디 꿈보 인상 딜라테네 초사기 쿠와양 공부차게des. 제산 초사기 꾸겁된데 지 소소소소 소이나 아니 캘렌지 소이나 아니 소소기 캠보 르븐기 전두 믹세마 붕직사야 야마나 착 붕직사야 된데 캘렌지 세와이나 캘렌지 레마이나 아니 돈발레 다워드 치차게des. 초사야 디파장기 고갑된다고 지 심나 야워여베스
야보다 여러 왔어라. 이나야 domba도 찍바레세 니 랍톡 마레스. 라. 안주 냠닝 ning 주델야 라바숨. 라바숨 디타 조레스. 라바숨 그난게 심마디 수rum 글라바레스 송여마도 산지 템비 다고 코랑기 심마디 수rum 글라바레스 송여마도 어쩌나 수rum 글라바고 말다 심바치는 디그리 세직 자원이 송메자 찍바레스 랍톡 마레스 이는 초사이그레 약부레서라.
It's good to do it. It is a good thing, but still it's not, you could say, similar to taking a vow and practicing on that basis. The basis for the three trainings that we take up is the training in ethical discipline. So as such, the Buddha in his teaching didn't say that you don't have to create the basis of ethical discipline. Rather than doing that, you can do something instead. So still taking a vow and training in ethical discipline is still the basis of our training. So it's good to, for those who want to make such pledges, just those who can make such pledges, it's good to do it, but still it's not really in lieu of having a vow.
Teredadi ngaldu svatstam deondi ben labasum. Ani kyayu kunjosum. Shaondi gendundi kechimbu shoji tsagdwas. Mada ani chidang ben chanju samba. Chanju samba ani shojire ta nyendo gendele pe chanju sambi ta lab chigre. Ani chanju sambi send down and do the gendus mix the lagu mada tindi lagu madas. 이지미 겐된 자야디 케바 쇼지어사레스 비 템비 자월 투데고사레스 디로
For someone that is ordained, the three objects of refuge, the three trainings are of utmost significance. And although we say that when you consider the practice of bodhisattvas, it is so precious and so much greater, so much more effective, and therefore, they are very precious to us. It's not that we say or that we think that, therefore, rather than becoming ordained as a Shravaka, for example, it's better for you to become a bodhisattva. Still, the training in ethics, the training in keeping the vow of ordination becomes of utmost importance.
테레 베나간주 베도진 바이나 비 따지 겐덴바기로 겐덴바기 돌로이나레 데사이나레 풀바춘체니 안지 미디아게 자원이니 베주치 말했어. 로 딘디기 비기라야 지gur 아니 지 겐덴바기 비 아니 지 최사이스 믹스게 지 푸바냐데라 소바 로 아니 돌로 믹스게 냐야라 소바 미상소소 어딘지 지그레스 로
So, for example, in Tibetan society, looking at the way that Tibetan society behaves in relation to their community of Sangha, then the laity would not use clothes or seeds or even cups that are used by the ordained. So if you, for example, invite someone to your home, then you have a set of cups, for example, that you would use in order to offer to the ordained. This is how they do it in Tibetan society.
데리다 롱베기 미코랑기 겐둥기 델이야 아니치 구십다 지구슈 지여바나 겐둥기 데데 란싱기 아니 야부차야치 통첨부차야치 용거로 와서라 아니 미코랑기 지금 롱바코랑기 겐둥바다 지금 미개 빠르래야 케바 카에 메교로 통 카에 맞아 지구 직장 인삼성기 맞아 미리 지구 직장 인삼성고 뒤시소리 쟤는 조대바나 아니 겐둥기 데 수기야 카부쇼치 텔레야 통레야 카부쇼치 텔은 통말레나 겐둥기 데는 통말레나 아니 군조섬레야 통레야디 카부렌다스 군조섬은 통말레나 아니 꺄브로용야 카부레 꺄브로마요나 아니 산지기 추역이 넘버 텔레야 추야디 탑시메주 차도도스로.
So then in terms of the training that we take, if we train ourselves as Buddhists, then at least in Buddhist societies, Buddhist countries, then you also develop the sense of appreciation and respect to the monastic community, to the community of Sangha. So the idea is that if we regard them as being just like us, or completely no difference between Sangha and laity in that sense, then there would be also no way of appreciating the three objects of refuge in terms of developing appreciation, for example, to the Sangha jewel, right? So as such, we also not going to be able to train well in going for refuge. So it is important to keep that in mind.
어딜 다고온다 대찬 찍지나 고랑이 고랑 타와도지 미찬니 타와때 되게 마상로지 산지 추 고랑 나올라야 비 다직 된순간은 조던 되되노노라 개심부 쉬우지네 송샤규디 간즈 테스트 코스 제바이는 야부도 왔으라.
Geshe apologizes. He said that it seems that he's saying that because, you might think that he's saying that because he's a monk, so this monk is looking for attention or for appreciation, but it's not like that. It's rather that this is what we find in the Buddhist teachings, in the Buddhist the text that the Buddha laid out. So it's good to become aware of that.
어디래다? Just it's okay. Good teacher.
It's okay. Little bit of excitation, that's okay.
당이 되면 지금 록샤긴다 스라. 시시야 토면이 랑진진 컴비 왕기 내칸 따고 찍나 chiwa zik senang koyo nawa chetam sam druchik tuk senang koyo gola gyabki tok yul nyen sewa levna koyo chani keji tobatang 대신도 라라 땀인지 돈 dungal 라라 드라마트지 돈 dungal 라라 녜마 큐기 돈 dungal 때 너나 라라 찍도 쭉 롱롱 찍도 쭉바 탐지 라 레렌지 짜원 것을 차오스.
All right, having said that, let's go back to the text. So we've been looking at mind training like the rays of the sun, and we've been looking now at the section of developing bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. So picking up from page 50, it says, due to the strength of our acquaintance with a self-centered attitude over beginningless time, this is what we call a self-cherishing attitude. Since beginningless time, if we hear the squealing of rats in a house, we are frightened of them nibbling our nose. Hearing claps of thunder, we worry that our heads will be struck by lightning, and coming to a haunted place, we are afraid. It is you, the self-centered attitude, that causes our fear.
됐어. 어디다 레렌 탐지 기자와 무슨 자고리 송야티. 레렌 탐지 기자와 무슨 자고리 송디. 다 레렌 탐지 찍는다세 가정이만 간주 줘요래. 다 간지 아니 가르송도 슬라디 디나로야. 아니 조디 동아 탐지 종사디 란진질이야 투요레스. 어디송도스 라 란진진 세야틀이야 투샤스 디송도스.
When it says it is you, the self-centered attitude, the self-cherishing attitude that causes our fear. Similarly, there are those who suffer from fear of bad talk, and some who are upset at being unable to restrain their enemies, and others who are distressed at being unable to support their family and friends. In short, in whatever ways and by whatever means you are tormented, we should realize that selfishness is the source of blame. We began this section with reading a line from the 7-point mind training, which says, banish the one to blame for all. So what we blame for all our misfortune is our self-cherishing attitude, selfishness.
어디서 당한서 여기 란진진디 딱이 지단 가정이마 지 슈스마인스 란진진 문진 제거야디 다 개체슈 차데샤스로 란진진라 투바레스 라브치니 도스 로샤바이나 베나 직출이야 이체영에 베로 딘디진바이나 다가라레 삼다 단 로샤야지 다 용거로스 이내야 아니 딘디게 베기다 직마 파메는 마규니 출이야 디명에 다 직페기 출이야 심주치는 자니 직 아니 최대야 심주칭인진바이나 다 아니 독바사야기 니직 레샤스 란진진디 야부진 문지치 마투바이나 안디 계제도 남은로 계제 참으시오지 제문도 상고도 나랑 삼줄이야.
It's important to identify selfishness or a self-cherishing attitude as referred to by this section. It's really important that we take the time to precisely identify what this selfish attitude is, because if we continue with our engagement or practice of the Dharma without looking into matters like that, it's possible that we do that. It's possible that we just have the sense of trust in the Buddha Dharma and we go along with whatever we do. It is possible that for some of us, the Buddha Dharma is part of our cultural habituation or conditioning, so we don't really ask about such issues. But here, we want to develop an attitude that is more inquisitive and is more looking into what selfishness is, according to the section that we cover here. So if you study that, if you ask questions, if you raise doubts, then you have an ability to more precisely identify what this self-cherishing attitude is.
매와 간선당한서 산지기 최용다 당보 시원디 심전 탐지 대와 되바다 동안 문제바 지규리 임바인사 동아 세비 탑고도 대와 뒤 탑지고도 텔데니 아니 산지기다 랍샤 나샤바 임바디 세우쇼지레스 라 아니 랍샤 이나디레 타투기 아니 드브자데 송디 란든 고다 셴든 코스니 니칭도스 랑기 튼도 추구토고야 셴기튼도 수구토고야세 니송도스 란든 드고고요바 란든 키친부 임바디야 송도스 다 란체반 진세디 랑피 데바데바 란니 야부지 용야 란니 제바 송야 대참 아니 동아 탐지기 종공레슬라바이나 아니 다 우유니츠다 담 멘팀비 소르지 차르치기도 하스라
So it's important to recognize what self-cherishing attitude is, to be able to identify it precisely, because first of all, we do recognize that we hold ourselves dear. Everyone does it. Everyone is holding themselves dear. In that, to begin with, when we look at a basic wish, we want to be happy and we do not want to suffer. We're looking for happiness and we want to avoid suffering and pain. Not only that, we need also to look for the methods for removing the suffering that we experience and accomplishing the happiness that we seek. So in relation to that, the Buddha gave advice, gave teachings. And the teachings lead at the end to the accomplishment of the two bodies of Buddha. And the two bodies of Buddha are said to be for the sake of oneself and for the sake of others. So for the sake of oneself, we attain the Dhammakaya. For the sake of others, we attain the form body of the Rupakaya. So these two bodies that we seek to accomplish through our practice are bodies for the sake of oneself and others, and therefore looking at one's own welfare, one's own purpose is also important. But still, when we recognize what a self-cherishing attitude is, it is the one that is solely invested in one's own happiness, welfare, well-being, and so forth, without taking into consideration the welfare of others.
가시기다 란친즈세야티피 ndasharana shagor sedayatindi yungudos kanji this message shagoya de jase jatam reshas ani ganzu namgi da rangit ran cheban zinza rana ya deva gogores rangi deva rana deva yongo gores rana ya deva yong chedo shen yawa torbayna shen yawa toni randun drubayna rangi tun chima chishinji drub tuya yori yomarsil kabu shochik peshi misi wazuruchik nekab kipena tachik ani nimachik nige ani chik tsobe tendada ani shendun yawa torchine randun drubayna yong chogor dayna ya tendu dewa sayadi shen yawa toni ran tendu dewa sayadi zawani yong misi wajinsares.
So being concerned only for one's own welfare in a self-cherishing attitude is said to be a real source of suffering, unsought suffering that we experience. So then when we try to become more precise about what self-cherishing is, what is that attitude of cherishing oneself only? It is the type of, so first of all, we have different views with respect to that. Different scholars have their own ideas about what self-cherishing is. Some say that, for example, it is a type of attachment. But still, when we look closely at what self-cherishing is, then we'll recognize that, first of all, self-cherishing is seeking one's own happiness and welfare, benefit, and so forth. But it is doing so in neglecting others, ignoring others, or disregarding others. So can we really accomplish our happiness and well-being if we do so through neglecting others, through ignoring others? Well, we can recognize that on a daily basis, there are some things that can be accomplished, even if we disregard others. So sometimes we find success, we do find some happiness or well-being when we pursue our own happiness and well-being through disregarding others. While something like that is possible, still, when we consider a long-term goal, which is long-lasting happiness and well-being, it is impossible to attain long-lasting happiness and well-being if our attitude is such that we only focus on ourselves and completely disregard others.
테라다 랑 간스나 소수기 대화 칸르치 여바이네야 대화디 셴르 때네 용구 여바디 세우쇼지라서라 직 롬바 기부질이야 대고는 롬바 기부는 소수직부 대바이나 기부지요 말았다 라 소수직부 마도 소차신 지 메시지리야 대바이나 아니 페시 데투 말았어 딘디 성당바이나 간지 기부 용야디 셴라야 소차 셴라야 되어버디 야차야tam바인자 딘티기 아니 남주직 토네 아니 란디 저거야 마도 딘티드 터치네로 딘티드 터치네 아니 비기다지 란라야 차바치 보기 샤만디 켜지네 란치반 점바이나 티 동아용야 고레스 동아용야 고레스
Our happiness and well-being come about in dependence upon others. So think about it. Think about, for example, try to imagine a situation in which you find yourself in an excellent place, a place that is considered to be a happy place, a joyous place, and so forth, but you're completely alone. There is no other living being around you, and you'll have to live or stay in that place for a very long time. And it might be a really comfortable and happy and enjoyable place, but you're completely alone. Can you really be happy if there is no other living being around you? Impossible. So happiness does depend upon others. So if you really act in a smart way, in a wise way about your own welfare, you see that your own welfare, your own happiness is related to others. And yet, we become attached to our own welfare alone. Through its self-cherishing attitude, we open the door for much suffering in the future.
and card drona yanchi susu the magange any mimamu tuena ranshing makivach penju yobata sasan yobata pugu yobajunse zawin transaменdos ro odu sinza any sula in the dun drobaina gangach vila yachi any chambu tumbu chavana kawadro kawad denaya and heshik chin ro kanji sheding alia and metsiki to yachi tabshidi shenla tunyadi yembadi Geshe pareshas Geshe dinza tankam ani ranchin zin seadi ani o dindijili ya chik namji jawarum chik sungorata monde sech ti sorach mombi wangi ranchevan zimbadi ani norgudos sherab da dembitoni ranchevan zimbadi digi tsawareshas ro kanji sem mombi wangi sombaina digmebachi and dikal diniro jungonzi chigu mendo roji samgudusra.
If you're a little bit ignorant about your own welfare, you might be thinking that so long as my personal situation is good, my family situation is good, I have enough money, I have kids, I have everything is going well for me just in my own family unit, and therefore I don't really need to depend upon others. I do not depend upon others. I can do whatever I want. And through that, you disregard the welfare of others. Geshe reckons that you will be acquiring quite a few people that will dislike your attitude. And if there are many around you that dislike your attitude, at the end, it will be difficult for you to stay or live in a certain place and be completely happy if you're surrounded by those who don't really like you. So looking at, conversely, looking at another situation where your attitude is such that you recognize how valuable others are to you. Wherever you go, you try as much as possible to be in agreement and harmonious with others, to be nice to others. Geshe reckons that wherever you are, definitely you'll be able to be happy, and also your mind will be peaceful. His Honest Dalai says that acting ignorantly, we get involved with self-cherishing. But if we really want to be selfishly wise, or to be intelligent in a way that we're selfish, we should cherish others. So cherishing others, you could say, is like a really smart way of being selfish. If you really want to accomplish your own welfare, your own happiness, what you need to do is to cherish other living beings. That will bring about happiness.
아니 부스터부실 되는 마음 배워라스 디 가르스나 뒤균den기 수수 년콜라 유비기 메단 제와 야부지 메바이나 아니 미갸타 마무킬 대바이나 양아 찍고 차수 삼성기 아니 남라디 레그라스라 아니 샘감 마디바 레그라스 뒤균den기 수수 년콜라 유비 아니 메다 정지 야부 제와 야부 게제시에 야부 여바이나 기도 가르까가 이바이나 콜야 직피려야 아니 로테서 용그러스 아니 디기 샘감을 팽그러스 디 메바이나 벤조다디 카리요 바이나야 아니 샘버 포스토부차 아니 샘감 마기바 용데디 딘디그레도스
So we can see that based upon our own experience and the experience of others. Like, for example, we know some of us are living in big cities containing hundreds of thousands of people, and many people feel completely lonely, even if they are surrounded by so many people. So this sense of loneliness comes from not being able to relate to others. Whereas when you live in a place like that and you build a network of people around you, you have those that you can rely upon, those that you can share your experiences with, those that you recognize that you depend upon them and they depend upon you. You find it that it's really helping your mind. Your mind is becoming much more happy if you're able to relate to those around you and create those social networks.
다디마지 록셔나 디리 딘저지 레셔스로 게시 나모와다 나모와 자동자는 당진 인고란 잔자 셰바당 게신 벤스임기 칼고 템비 동통 농부 손이 그 짐나 나의 짐 그러나 녜르 지다스 아니 랑탐비 케단자가 심전은 볼 제대는 렌조 탐지 콘르데니 총소 경담부가 탐지 랑길니 제대는 내봤다 동아 탐지 랑진진이 총소 시송데 대다르잖아 포 두드기 나왔다 칙침메 누버티 항이와지 령어서 대쭉 마총rin가 산답예 같이세 본버동거도 시작이야 세림부터 제자 탐제론이 제견 대비 용케버 종세게 매버치니 심부 네발람바터 지체로 마데바 추탑 매발의 몽비 랑기 탭 캄보 마셔와 세리 넘버지 그 세리 넘버지 그스 시작입니다.
Geshe Lamawa has suggested while you're chopping your brick tea, saying, come on, down with you, think that you're pounding on the head of your own selfishness. Geshe Ben also advised, I will stand guard at the doorway of my mind with a sharp spear of mindfulness. If he attacks, I will attack. If he relents, I will relent. Also, Langri Tampa said, give profit and victory to sentient beings. Why? Because the accumulation of all kinds of goodness arises in reliance upon them. Take loss and defeat upon yourself. Why? Because all harm and suffering come from holding yourself dear. If you practice in this way, just as a person can be laid low by food poisoning, so our self-centered attitude will be defeated. So long as we cannot do this, even if we load a yak with monastic robes or have the empowering vase placed on our heads 1,000 times, or listen to the doctrine for our entire lives, so give up everything mundane, no matter how we try, we will not achieve the object of our desire. We will be restless with pain, like the mongoose in grief over the death of its offspring. Instead, we will have to draw in our thumbs without extending them to others, begging for help. If we can persevere as advised, it is thought that we will become followers of the great vehicles. The mind will become expansive. We will be able to elevate others and will develop great wisdom.
Reda di nanglo ya keche shu chikdi ndindo se pomba tong goto to shajang se rimbu tyoba chejang tamche logni set. Tir dangan zu namji ta mimangbu shojige chik se rimbu la gagi yore se rimbu tobyagi chedo chik sewan shuya tindi da kyansu nanda shuru yogi marmada chik pegita chik sanga ki nyamne seti 아니 세통부 슈지레스라운데 다가랑 건지자고 삼성도 좀 마도 비기다 시자 거랑 가리임바 니돌 상로 마담바이나 아니 지 pombatomba goto shabat chikbato jires ro pombatomba jin goto la shani ani serim undra chi yomaros ta ngone gi pi sanga gi che ani chi nyamne chende shigona ani chi lami zane wanshuni ani chi pombang goto de shabata tida tünyamdu ani meba karchigu yeme samlo tang karsam tangu yeme ti düz rangi gölaya pacha karışagu yeme tzu chanzangji shimbitoni ani lamizane wanshubayna da serin royagi rewa yores da dimmebayna kakyji keba yomarisra.
One of the points that this section highlights is about things that we do in order to gain some success. It says that, for example, we might have the empowering buzz placed on our heads 1,000 times and listening to the doctrine for our entire lives. So this section that mentions placing an empowering buzz on your head. So there are some rituals, tantric rituals, where you line up and an empowering vase, a vase that is used for the empowerment, is placed upon your head. And some people say that this is something that can bring longevity. So if you have an empty vase touching your head, but you don't do anything else apart from bending down and letting down that touch your head and expecting that to give you longevity, then it is likely not to work like that. So whatever practice, so first of all, this is part of a tantric practice, a tantric ritual. It is involved sometimes with taking an empowerment. So if you do it properly, like for example, you receive an empowerment, but before receiving an empowerment, you think to yourself, what kind of practice do I want to take up? What do I need to do? What is the way that I need to be thinking? What type of imprints do I need to place upon my mind stream? What type of imprints will be placed if I do this practice, if I attend this empowerment? And through that, you go through the stages. Maybe at some point of an empowering vase will be placed upon your head. Then you can say that that could be a path for extending your life or for longevity. But otherwise, if you don't really do the work, if you just go around and ask someone to place that vase on your head and think that now I've attained longevity, it is very likely that it's not going to work.
어디래서 당간지 상가 추기 진람 종야래야 아니 샘바디 고양부로 직 비기 ran든 찍고 삼마임바 란 찍고래야 민데데 마임바 직 아니 만탈래야 직 수수익 년콜래 예비기 아니 다직 소셜 팅디래야 동남체 등이 간지 로고 양부 지겨봐이나 Syrian Pingres. That Dindrigi Lokuyan Shutik Chanchuk Sam said, Big Tashandun some big lot yon yalaya, and Ranchin Zion, and Danzin Tigi, and Gyuntong Gores. That Digi Gyundi Tonyalaya, Chick and Cow Kablaya, Sound of mine, but 2,000 Lega Karichi Yobania, and Danzing Gyund Sam, and Ben a chat don by Inaya, chat don Kalaya, Pig, and don't you chamay but Danzin don't go Samsung sort. Any Geshe Nemo, the song does Danzin don't go Samsung. So a detoni, Drogo Grace. The Dindrich Levana, and that's Syrian Drogres.
If you take up the practice of Tantra and you seek the blessings of Tantra, then you need to make sure that your mind is made vast and extensive. In that rather than keeping this selfish attitude or orientation in which you always come first or you always focus on yourself, you should make your mind vast and extensive and start to consider everyone around you, to consider living beings around you. And when you do that, and even more so when you think about bodhicitta, wherein you take upon yourself the responsibility for the welfare of all living beings, that gives you longevity. In order to do that, then we need to see the faults of self-cherishing and a self-grasping attitude. And in whatever we do, whatever job we take up, even be it simple, we can think of the faults of self-cherishing and self-grasping in doing that, as this section in the text referred to pounding a brick of tea. So it says, Geshe Namawa. Sorry. Geshe Namawa suggested while you're chopping your brick tea, right? So Tibetan tea sometimes come in those massive bricks of tea, and you need to pound it or to cut it in order to make tea out of it. So even when you do something like that, you pound on something, you can't cut something. You can think about it as cutting your own self-cherishing attitude, pounding on the head of your own self-grasping attitude.
There's baby nunas, don't teba chembo, yamba chembo, kaba chembo, lodru chembo sewa, tell us songs, tinti lot of giovanda, teba chembu, and yamnembaris, lodru chembos and tell us cigarettes.
And as this section says, if we can persevere as advised, it is thought that we will become followers of the great vehicle. Our minds will become expansive. We'll be able to elevate others and we'll develop great wisdom.
Dornas ranchin zingi shisongi nimunamji nyemik tuyusum de sanji tamji kawi pardu songjan sebin tamedes. Hajangi nyemik chimbo tamedes. Wen kyan kondu sheba tetsam re songru gondringi ten lama tambi menga ki rangi semgin tsando korbi surgi yang sam jal ngebar togor chadi. Diyona churona chitawan dugjan. Semgyu chodan ji, tonto kewa onlas. De mena yonde mindu tawa tamche jan danzingi su soni, nyumun pewe chosun droni yotos.
Essentially, if all the Buddhas of the three times were to teach for eons about the disadvantages of disturbing emotions that arise out of a self-centered attitude, they would never end. However, the above explanation contained in the Buddha's teachings, the commentaries to them, and the instructions of the Supreme Spiritual Masters is a means for making us aware of the defects of our own attitudes. Think about it again and again, test it, and become convinced of it. If we do this, whatever our external behavior may be, our mind streams will be mixed with the doctrine and our aims will be fulfilled. But if we do not, all those things labeled as qualities will only serve to gratify our own self-centered attitude.
Terda kenjen namka pelki peshe ranchin zinti ani danzin laya jargi mento samsung rajin dos pegita chi ranchin zinki nyemix ani pe gotuma ni samda ma sondi ani 디타 가서 domrodi 당진 기수소나 뉴문 페그로그레스 다 뉴문 기시 당진 기고라서 아니 동하기 시 란진진 기시소만아지 란진진디 비다 란제번 진야게 란디 베 아니 칸라야 마데바 유딘 요바타고 지글이야 아니 시샤니 아니 디제번 진비 로디 다 당진 레와스로 당진 레와스 다 딘디치기 용세베젤라 테니 차와카리나다 로 셴라 마데비게 란치 요바이나 아니 디워드 디메바치니 딘디치 때니 다 로 딘디치 게와이나 테니 차단 비유 규란레 마도비 카인 펜도요 마레스.
It seems that here Namkapel, the author of this text, applies the term self-cherishing to a self-grasping attitude. It says here, if we do this, whatever external behavior may be, our mind stream will be mixed with the doctrine and our aims will be fulfilled. But if we do not all these things labeled as qualities, will only serve to gratify the self-centered attitude. Now, before, this section also mentioned essentially, if all the Buddhas of the three times were to teach for eons about the disadvantages of the disturbing emotions that arise out of a self-centered attitude, they would never end. So often we would say that our afflictive states of mind, disturbing emotions, arise from a self-grasping attitude, the attitude of the grasping at the self, in which we think that things exist objectively without depending on or relying upon other things. And if we assume that things exist objectively without depending upon anything else, then this is what we call a self-grasping attitude. So if we hold on to this self-grasping attitude, anger, attachment, and so forth will arise.
다 딘자 베나 당진 이견 통술디 당진 이견 가서 다지 타르투드로디 견 타르투드로디 당진 아니 장유라야 신줄로도 슈바디 당진 이견레스 이제 당진 이견 통술 타르투바디 당진 신줄로이 바토스 당진 신줄로 토스나다 다음에 바토스나 디치바샤고레스 그러다 디레
If you wonder what the fault of self-grasping is, well, finally, the fault of self-grasping is that it engages its object erroneously. If it engages its object erroneously, it is a wrong consciousness. It is a misconception.
이제 다 당진 당진기 다 비게 라원을 쳐봐 다 라원도 쳐봐 라 나생인디 아니 비 유딘 코란 저 라원도 쳐봐 마도 디지 비지 파민타 섬다 지 현래 되는 여바지 자원이 차기요 말았어 디 메디기 딘디지기 로지기 원도 송바이나 아니 현래야 마디비기 ran zimbi lo tindiji on the sombayna jenla ya tubi chavadi yungmaras tara.
So with a self-grasping attitude, we grasp at the self as if it exists independently from its own side, to exist objectively, through not depending upon others, through not being labeled and such. So when we hold on to the self to exist in this way, we also act in a way that believes that our actions do not matter, in a sense that since the self does not depend upon others, then I don't need to take into consideration. I don't need to take others into consideration.
Robot didn't quinzin legros. Zazantina Zazan the Dumegi Legachevana, Zazan the Manchin Chagados. Dinza and Dumegi 라왕기 주변 짐비 로디 샤완도 송바이나 아니 견 틸레거레스 딘자 디 아니 디 견도 도야기 탑 탈투바디 아니 다메 바세티 로 라완도 마트바세티 디 톨라 som다인디 숭구요레스 로.
So if we continue to behave in this way, where we think that we are independent or unrelated to others, and in our actions we don't take into consideration others, then our friends are likely to start to get angry with us, and also in our relationships with our partner or others, we will not find harmony. These are all the faults of self-grasping, and the remedy for that is the understanding of the absence of that selflessness, the absence of an independent self.
And then those that the niba shenjin you pay some because the nyams lumber chow tembanis con la cutting chow com she sonde.
Let's look at the next section in the text. Just a second. So the last line says, within us will be the friendly relative who provokes us and increases our disturbing emotions. That's a self-grasping attitude. Now, the next section says what is to be put into practice through contemplating the advantages of concern for others. Now, the 7-point mind training says meditate on the great kindness of all beings.
And samlo yongya shen be tachi yabun tonya yidong tonya ge and lodi karin tengores laundi and kadin tempiconi and lot kegres con la cad cheocom sedi or disunguyorasra.
So here, first of all, we said that we want to see the faults of a self-cherishing attitude, to blame everything on one thing, our self-cherishing attitude. Now, the next instruction says, meditate on the great kindness of all beings, which is an instruction on developing an attitude of cherishing others. So when we see others in a positive light, when we find them appealing, we then, in order to do that, in order to see others in a positive light, to see them with a sense of appeal, we need to meditate on the great kindness of all of them.
There's that in the manchana yungota, kung cutting chawati, kung cutting chawaseti, Candace Gom Gores now, the Pena Kayo Layok Samler Tamana, Susu Tanda Susu Laya Kang Yobati, Shen Latini, Shen Bashi Latini, any Chonshawa Yimbadi. Samultanangan tara triggerasra suzu kekyan jiki che tuyaji kayamandos tara kayamandos tinza shenla teni chongwanza shenti kadichimbure samyagi logi teni tagarani kabdula len choya sorachi yorosra.
So how do we meditate on the great kindness of all? Well, to be practical about it, we can see that whatever we have, everything that we enjoy can be there only depends upon others. If we were to find ourselves completely alone without anyone else around us, there would be no one to provide us with whatever we use. So therefore, when we think of whatever we experience, whatever we enjoy, we can recognize that it comes through the kindness of others.
Ani chi shen ka den che kom dan de sen thombu go sam lo dan na chamba nyin chi chanju go sam lo so wa chi ani subi ge zoba ko ya lo de tham je da shen la de ni yung go re se di che pen thombu ro da di ani nganjol di nyamne de me bai na da di nyamne chi chi chong a de pe ma se ba ani ka den chi mu yen sam song lo de tele kya kha bo ro sa ro da ine nganjol la kha yo la yo ka re se na pe nganjol da zo di ani chi nyima la ya san dong che di me bai na 자원이는 다 대마투기 아니 뒤즈지려 와서 당한스러 이제 디디기 산동 론주 지야디 탐제로 아니 셴라된 로 대한셴 미망부칠된 미 가주 마와이나 아니 지 아니 두즈 용구여라다 배나 총소도서 미망부여나 총소 드라마를 망부 레기여레 미망부 매바이나 레기 말았어 말레디 아니 디 말레나 수수 비지지요 말았어. 딘지 상무 단치니 카야 라여기 수수라야 공고 카이 바디 셴라테니 대한직 니만니만 저 큐니메사기 미션을 때니 용되게 여바디 베스우러 딘지 상치니 셴디 개침부 임바 아니 상무 단 투바이나 데니 셴 제번진 미 진진 용야래야 팽기여서레스
That we are dependent upon others can be seen on so many different levels. So if you take it to a high level practice, then we can say that the practice of loving kindness and compassion, the development of bodhicitta, all those different practices depend upon others, and therefore through that we can appreciate the kindness of others. But even without practicing to such a high level, when we look at it at a slightly lower level, we can see how on a daily basis, whatever we use, our necessities, food and nourishment and so forth, they depend upon other living beings. Not only do they depend upon other living beings, they depend upon a great number, many living beings. And without them, we would not be able to use whatever we use daily. Without having so many people involved in all the different phases of producing the food that we eat and the things that we drink, we would find ourselves completely alone, not being able to enjoy whatever we enjoy daily. In some sense, you can say that when you think of going to a shopping mall or a place where you have a great variety of things that are being sold, to be able to have that great variety of things, great variety of products that are being sold, you also need to have many customers that live to that come to that place. Without them, you'll not be able to enjoy this great variety. So similarly, when we think of all the different things that we enjoy daily, which were made and produced and contributed to by so many living beings, we can then recognize how our happiness and well-being depends upon others, and therefore it is helpful to think about that in order to develop a self-cherishing and other-cherishing attitude.
테레자간지 셴진진 곰비 갑둘이야 셴기 연딩기 찬이 삼고야디 라 가드이나 산지기 주요나라야지 아니 망체디 연딩기 찬이 삼당고야디 빼마무송고도스라 진짜 셴기 연딩기 찬이 삼당 저와이나 아니 셴 약부지 통야지 라 더 견기찬이 삼당대와이냐 아주 견 통야 요라서 배나가 두 스캠으로인데 지금 총강으로 지금 저와이나 되는데 고고즈기 잘라서로지 배나 자체고 눈치 게주 아니 공코 메교 잘라서로지 짠짠 베일레틱 아니 민고 코리아 소리스 아니 뒤저 촐라 베샤 촐라 소리스 딘디 다 디조 젠젠젠 카드레야 디조 성당고에서 말했어 수술의 펜도 고규 잘라 가인바디 셴라되는 용도 이제 셴 키셴보를 성성 상디다는 저와이나 아니 셴진진 로틀리그리 란진진 비기다 아니 로디 슈촌드야지 어딘저나 간지 샘나라야 파베부 용야지 용구여서레스
So we need to think of the good qualities of others, and this is something that the Buddha emphasized in the teachings that he gave. Think of the good qualities of others. Do not attend your mind to the faults, to the drawbacks of others. So if we constantly think of the good qualities of others, we will come to see them in a positive way. Whereas if we tend to dwell on the drawbacks and the faults of others, then we will find them as we will find others and those who are not necessary for our life. It's just like, for example, if you visit a big shopping place and you have the tendency to think of everything around you, or most of the things around you is things that no one needs, that are of no use whatsoever, and then obviously you're not going to find this place to be really helpful to you. So here, when we think of developing an attitude of cherishing others, we want to recognize the good qualities of others rather than dwelling on the drawbacks, trying to find faults in others. We want to constantly remind ourselves of the good qualities of others. And if we do that, an other cherishing attitude will increase. and our own self-cherishing will decrease. And if you do that, it will definitely be helpful in developing a greater degree of happiness and well-being.
이래서 nga 대주에 맞도 저거라서 저디 삼발라 pen 총간 친구 저디 가시기 pen mikjo자 게모게 안딘디칭에 두스라 이나 삼살야 수 게모게 거다 파 게모로 삼살 게모로 쇼 가즈나 비디 돌로 근교니 알다모 캅도 거라야 우지 또 먼저 싸싸 덥지 아니 권단이 꿈통데 꿈단이 권통데인도 안주디야 베데니 주부 찬상 캡토야지 캬디야 아니 캡토야지 사와츠나 캡토야지 그 돌로 찬상지 야우지 큰 거데냐 가시 뗄다는 게모 쇼쇼드스라
Geshe sometimes visits the shopping mall and says that as he walks around with his fashion choice, and of course, not everyone looks at that in a favorite way, in the sense that sometimes he sees that people look at him kind of with a side glance, and sometimes people kind of smile at him. So Geshe says that if you just smile at people, then they react in kind. So no matter how, what is the way that one is looking at you, if you just give them a smile, it is likely that they're going to react in a similar way. So although some people find this fashion choice to be a little bit odd, Geshe said that actually is quite practical. Rather than having to change between different sets of clothes between summer and winter, when in the summer kind of you wear things that are quite revealing, and in the winter you have to cover yourself. This is something that is practical. You can just kind of shade a couple of layers if it's too hot, or cover yourself up if it's a little bit cold. It's actually very practical both for the summer and winter.
들어다 간지 그 연댕 전단 줘대바나 아니 약수치라 아니 약수치 레도스 그런 내가 기부차고래 그 가르 근거야나 그런 내가 기부래 그 기부촌의 약부라 상상도 또 줘봐이나 안 가르 통나야지 마대와도 매교지 땡땡 차여서래서 더 상기를 뒤온 걸 상기 뒤 곰을 내버려서 심지어 탐지 년도 셔야 돼 아니 빌로 곰지 땜발 때니 내버려서 안 단도 겨울지 딱 봐로지 아니 잔주고 샘 곰다 탐지 년도 셔야지 용구도 송돼야 돼 딘디지러 와서
So if you do think of the good qualities of others, you meditate on good qualities of others, you find that your mind can be happy wherever you are, whatever you wear, whatever others wear, you're still going to be happy. Your mind is still going to be at ease, it's going to be comfortable. And this is what the Buddha did. This is the practice that the Buddha took up in order to attain the state that he attained. So the Buddha habituated himself with thinking of the good qualities of others. And it's honestly, the Dalai Lama also has been emphasizing it quite a lot. He says that continue to meditate on bodhicitta. Draw your mind closer to others. Make sure that you feel a sense of closeness to others.
레지던시 송데스 질 테버치비 마치론 샤서라 질 테버치비 리진기 간살라 오문주번의 송바터 잠바닌지 통답할 수도 같이라 대다 순전을 때니 게디 심진 대회 본번 남라 명니 잠바 동을 면소 본봤다고 시비 순전을 명니 세번인지 전부 게디 존중래 장섬 된란 처박강 대한 심진 체원이 제송소스
So we read through the first line in this section that quotes a line from the 7-point mind training. Then the commentary says, Chandakirti states in his supplement to Nagarjuna's treatise on the middle way that in general, for a person to belong to the lineage of the great vehicle, love and compassion are vitally important as at the beginning, middle, and end of his or her practice. Both are developed in dependence on sentient beings. Love by focusing on the fact that sentient beings are bereft of happiness, and sympathetic great compassion by focusing on the fact that sentient beings are afflicted by suffering like a raging bonfire. The Gayatri Bodhisattva way of life says, that we make offerings to whoever has the mind of love also reflects the value of sentient beings. Thank you. We'll leave it here for now. So let's say some dedication verses. But the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen, arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, might quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha, and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. Several of the snowland teachings and transmigrated beings that makes extremely clear the path of this unification of emptiness and compassion. To the lotus holder Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You uphold the Sibiu's moral way that serves in the manifold bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplished magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels. Several of myself and others, your disciples, please live long.